Let's blast through with sonic speed!
What's up, guys? You know, for as long as I can remember, I always wanted to be a filmmaker. I grew up being inspired by all the classics like Kung Pao Into the Fist and The Room, but I don't want to be locked into just one thing for the rest of my life. So what if I combined my two loves, video games and movies, into one thing? What's the worst that could happen, right?
Film is one of the most important and beloved art forms ever created. The ways filmmakers can express impactful themes and messages through equally impactful methods of visual storytelling is truly a marvel to behold, and the medium as a whole has stood the test of time for over 100 years. Film is an incredible art medium, and its importance to pop culture and life in general cannot be understated. So why are all video game movies so fucking terrible? Video games and movies have gone together for quite a while now. While films based on video game properties have existed since the early 90s, the similarities between the two run deeper than one might first believe. They're both two of the biggest storytelling and entertainment mediums ever created. A lot of big name directors or actors are actually fans of video games, and as technology has progressed, companies have tried to turn video games into more cinematic movie-like experiences. But while cinematic video games are generally well received, movies based on video game properties are universally reviled and despised. But why is that? Why are video game movies so terrible when we live in a world where other forms of media based on video games are actually really good? It's a couple of things. The first reason is that video games are almost entirely dependent on being controlled by the player. Even with more cinematic games, you'll often have to go through various gameplay sequences until you can watch the next cutscene and continue the story. So when you remove the gameplay from a video game, you're effectively removing the most vital element in immersing and drawing in players, and you now have to depend entirely on your story to carry your work. This isn't even mentioning the challenge of having to convert several dozens of hours of gameplay into a concise 2 to 3 hour film. Which leads us to the second reason why video game movies don't work. People making these movies don't know what they're doing. Okay, that sounds pretty harsh, but for whatever reason, people just do not understand how to write plots based on video game properties. There are other factors relating to this, like studios not taking the premise seriously, writers not understanding what makes the game work to begin with, or people just not being good writers. But hey, what do I know? I've never written a movie before, so I obviously don't know what I'm talking about when I say a Monster Hunter movie starring the US military is a stupid fucking dumbass idea, right? So yeah, there are a lot of different reasons why video game movies fall flat, but surely there are some things to enjoy about these films, right? Well, today we're going to suffer through a handful of video game movies in the hope that there's something redeeming about any of them. So let's go back to where the nightmares begin with 1993's Super Mario What? There's another video game movie before that? The Wizard. Let's go back to where the nightmares began with 1989's The Wizard. The Wizard is a kid's film about a boy named Jimmy who just so happens to be an incredible video game player, and thus decides to go on an adventure with his brother Fred Savage and this girl named Haley to enter and win a video game tournament in California. While The Wizard isn't a movie based on any specific video game, it was one of the first instances of a film accurately acknowledging the medium, and having its entire plot be based around games. I mean, Tron did come out like 7 years prior and there were plenty of other movies that had their plots revolve around games, but this was the first to really appreciate the medium of video games and actually feature multiple real-life games. Now as for the movie's actual quality, it's kinda bland. It's a very standard kids movie, with not much of anything really happening besides a whole lot of Nintendo advertisements. The entire movie is a glorified ad for the Nintendo Entertainment System, probably because the film was a collaboration between Universal and Nintendo to promote Super Mario Bros. 3. You can really tell this movie was just made to sell you something. The NES, Power Glove, and a ton of other Nintendo products are pretty blatantly marketed to the audience, and really, the reveal of Super Mario Bros. 3 at the end is honestly the only notable part of the entire film. It's a fine enough movie and interesting to go back on to see the Mario 3 bit, but not really memorable.
But you see, while The Wizard is an average movie about video games, the Super Mario Bros. Movie is my sleep paralysis demon brought to life.
The Super Mario Bros. Movie, largely considered to be the first video game movie ever made, and infamous for being bad. The film was plagued with production nightmares, the tone and setting feel like complete contradictions to the world you'd expect Mario to have, and as a whole, the entire thing is just a mess that's Mario in name alone. Look at this is supposed to be Bowser, this is Yoshi! How did they think this was okay? At the very least, the acting is pretty alright, and some of the special effects and sets actually do look pretty nice, but it's just so baffling that they thought this was the direction they should have taken for a Super Mario Bros. Movie. Also, here's some fun facts. The actors for Mario and Luigi, Bob Hoskins and John Leguizamo, both consider this movie to be the low points of their entire careers, and the two were also frequently drunk throughout the entire filming process of this movie. Incredible. But yeah, this movie's no good. The film does have a bit of a cult following and an unofficial sequel comic, but it really says a lot that there wasn't another Nintendo film until Detective Pikachu 26 years later. There is apparently a new animated Mario film in the works set for a 2022 release, but we don't have much to go off of right now. I think animation fits Mario way more than live action, but the movie's apparently being animated by ILLUMINATION, the creators of the Minions and Sing movies.
This is gonna be bad.
On the flip side to Mario, we have his old rival Sonic the Hedgehog, who got a theatrically released film in February 2020. The Blue Blur did get an animated OVA in the mid-90s, but I mostly want to stick to films that release theatrically, plus video games get plenty of OVAs anyway, so I think that's a whole other topic for another day. Anyway, enough about Sonic, let's talk about Sonic. Originally, the Sonic movie was set to go with this design, Jesus Christ. But thankfully people were very vocal against the look, so the studio delayed the film to fix Sonic, and this design is much better in my opinion. As for the quality of the movie itself, it's actually pretty decent. It's a fairly safe kids movie, but it stands out among other video game films due to the actors and the faithfulness to the character. Ben Schwartz and Jim Carrey kill it as Sonic and Eggman respectively, and you can really tell that the writers were fans of the series due to how many little nods and callbacks there were throughout the film. The story is another CGI character gets transported to the real world type of plot, and most of the human characters are kind of boring, but overall, you did it, Sonic. And here's hoping the sequel is good as well. Fighting games are a genre that have gotten a ton of movies over the years. Tekken, King of Fighters, Dead or Alive, but obviously the two biggest movies based on fighting games are Street Fighter the movie and Mortal Kombat. Both of these films kind of have a bit of a cult following. Granted, a lot of video game movies have cult followings in some way, but with these two specifically, there are tons of actual unapologetic fans that enjoy these films. I mean, I can kind of see why. Both feel fairly accurate to their source materials, one more so than the other, are decently acted, and are cheesy as all hell, but in a good way. If I were to compare the two side by side, I'd say Mortal Kombat is probably the better movie and more accurate to the tone of the original games, but both are still pretty similar in a lot of ways. Mortal Kombat is definitely the better received of the two though, with tons of callbacks and references being present in Mortal Kombat 11, including actors from the film coming back to reprise their roles as well. Plus this movie is where the iconic Mortal Kombat theme came from, which is pretty cool too. As for some more similarities, both of these movies got terrible sequels, but only one of these franchises got a reboot in 2021 that's infinitely worse than the original. Mortal Kombat 2021 is pretty bland. Sure, the action is decent, Kano is hilarious, and it's very gory unlike the original, but I can't help but not like the 1995 version more. It feels like it cared more about the source material, while the new ones spend way too much time trying to justify why characters can shoot fireballs and have laser eyes, like what? A lot of characters in the new one also just show up with no backstory and are unceremoniously killed off, which is annoying as well. Also, let's give it up for my least favorite Mortal Kombat character with Cole Young, whose entire shtick is being so bad at fighting that he gets literal plot armor.
I don't think I like this movie.
To go back to the original Mortal Kombat for a brief moment, I wanted to talk about its director Paul W.S. Anderson because this man is the poster boy for making movies based on video games. While he did direct Mortal Kombat, he's probably most well known for making the Resident Evil movies, films I have no interest in ever seeing because I own Kirby's Epic Yarn, scary stuff doesn't really mesh well with me. Despite that though, I heard about these movies a lot as a kid. Critically, they're about as bad as you'd expect them to be. But financially, all these movies did super well, and they were so big that I didn't even realize that these films were based on video games when I was younger. I do find it interesting how these movies took on the more action-oriented tone that would eventually plague the rest of the series years before they would actually try it. But yeah, despite them making a ton of money, I don't really care about these. Then Paul decided to fuck over Monster Hunter. For those of you who don't know, Monster Hunter is a series all about killing giant monsters, taking those monsters' parts to create cool armor and weapons, and then going out to kill even stronger giant monsters. You'll want to know what Monster Hunter isn't about. It's not about the fucking US military being transported to Monster Hunter land to shoot the monsters with big guns and promote real-world products. God, what a terrible adaptation. I'm not even a huge Monster Hunter fan, but I know this is a complete spit in the face of the series. Don't worry though, because it bombed hard on release, so take that, Paul. Alright, well that was just a handful of video game movies that suck, so let's rapid fire through some more and briefly discuss the yet to be released films that I don't have much to say about. Doom takes what I love about the actual Doom games and throws it away to instead make a boring sci-fi movie on Mars. They made another one of these. Tomb Raiders had a couple of film adaptations, with many of them seeming to suffer from their scripts rather than their main leads. Silent Hill did the opposite of Resident Evil and actually stayed in the horror genre for its films, but they are still pretty bad. Everyone's favorite Assassin's Creed tried to do a movie in 2016 and it was apparently so boring that they had to cancel the sequel they were working on. That's nice. And lastly there was Warcraft, the one video game movie that gave people hope that these films could actually be good, but in the end not even it was safe from the video game movie curse. As for some video game movies that are coming up, we have Sonic 2, which will hopefully be just as good as the first one, Uncharted starring Tom Holland, a terrible choice to play Nathan Drake in my opinion, especially when Nathan Fillion already did an Uncharted short film and killed it, Borderlands, good luck with that. Mega Man, Minecraft, Just Dance, if it's a somewhat big video game property, it's probably had or currently has a film in development, because don't worry guys, this will be the good one, I swear. So, video game movies. They're not great. A lot of them barely represent what the games are actually like, are badly written or acted, or they're just not great films as a whole. But are these movies doomed to be terrible forever? Well, actually, no. Films like Sonic the Hedgehog and Detective Pikachu actually turned out pretty decent, and even some joy can be derived from some of the more egregious examples like with Street Fighter. Video games are now bigger than ever, even bigger than film now, and a lot of people that grew up seriously loving games are breaking into the film industry, so I think it's entirely possible for these types of films to turn things around and actually start being good. I mean hell, TV and animation seem to get video games, so I think it's only a matter of time until the film industry gets it as well. In summary, we're fucked if that Metal Gear movie bombs.
While video game movies can be pretty trash, they can at least serve as inspiration for what I shouldn't do for my future movies. Yeah, that's right, I'm gonna outshine all these big-time Hollywood directors with my own adaptation of one of my favorite games of all time. So here's a sneak preview at my future Persona 5 movie.
It's me, Joe Kerr, and I was just your average American high school student when one day this mysterious smartphone app popped up on my phone. It takes us to this mysterious dimension called the metaverse, so now me and my bestest buds used to take down the evil villains of society as the mysterious phantom thieves. It's me f***ing working on it. I'm not actually a cat in this version, I'm just a guy with cat makeup on. I don't know, I don't get paid enough for this shit. Yo, what's up? I'm Ryuji Stewart. I'm best friends with Joe, and I'm just a chill dude. Now that you've been introduced, it's time for us to go into the metaverse and take down the evil CEO of crime. It is I, the CEO of crime, and I will use my powers to destroy the city we're currently in, which is Chicago, Illinois, and I will rule the...
I think we can get the Oscar with this.